All right, hi everyone. I am Carl Chester. I'm an engineer at Oracle, and I'm going to be talking to you about diagramming as code, a way of conveying information about our systems through diagrams, but managing it through methods how we do with code. So hopefully you'll take away something out of this 5-minute talk to apply in your systems. Quick, tell me where the system, single point of failure is in the system. Where is the system, single point of failure? Tell me. Both of them are conveying the same information, but one is highlighted in a diagram that you can see quickly because we are visual creatures. So what is diagramming as code? It's a philosophy of how we're going to manage kind of diagrams with the same tool chain as we do with code. This aligns with docs as code or documentation as code. So you may ask, well, what is documentation as code? Well, it's pretty much, I would say, categorized by some properties. One, it's kind of authored in plain text like Markdown. You can manage it with your same kind of code. It's in version control, so you can easily make changes with it. You have it in your code reviews, so you make both changes, and it's also managed with your issue tracking of code changes. So in this talk, we're going to survey really quick 5 tools. We're going to talk about GraphViz, Mermaid, Diagrams, D2, and Draw.io, which is a different kind of tool that also manually manages your documentation and diagrams. So GraphViz, this is the grandparent of them all. It's been around for over a decade. You can clearly kind of describe kind of a directed graph through this, through some language like this, and it can build out a nice visual of what that is. There are tons of tools that output this kind of syntax. Mermaid, this is extremely popular, a new one, which you can build tons of different diagrams with this in a lot of different types of tool chains. We'll talk about some of those integrations or what that looks like. So the first ones you may see is a typical one we just had. A typical like directed graph, you can make a flow chart with the same kind of symbols and it can illustrate that diagram you have down below. It makes it very easy to kind of describe dependencies, the classic box and arrows. You can describe a lot with boxes and arrows, but it also has tons more support and tons of diagrams. So you can do tons of different things about illustrating your systems by keeping that documentation of your diagrams close to your code. Proximity is key in maintaining documentation like diagrams. Mermaid also has tons of integrations. VS Code, you can write right within your editor and it can give you the actual preview of that diagram on the right-hand side. GitHub, it's baked in as well, so you can put it in your Markdown, also in comments and code reviews. It also can be understood by generative systems. So you can describe something, and the machine, which uses the language to communicate back to you, can describe it in a diagram. So in that language of the illustration of dependencies, you can actually take that and move it into something visual. Diagrams is another project. It's a Python package that can do some really nice illustrations by describing it in code to visualize your system. It utilizes GraphViz. Remember, our grandparent of them all? So in diagrams, here's an example of doing that same system I had earlier, but doing it with some nice, beautiful color illustrations if I'm using AWS. But as you can see, you can use some simple declarations of what that is, and then you can use this program kind of in flight of a Python, execute that program, and generate it. It also has a sweet inventory of all these different icons you can use. So you have things from both Kubernetes, all the public cloud providers has their icons built in as well. So you can build even better kind of understanding of systems by using those icons. And next, we'll talk about D2. This is a brand new one that's more of another way of declaring systems in diagrams like this. So in this kind of illustration, we'll talk about another similar diagram you can use in D2. D2, as you look like, it's very similar language you can have before and make that nice, similar kind of representation of what it is. So that kind of directed graph view of it. But it also has a lot of other nice features, too, for how you can theme those type of diagrams and animate them. So in this example, you can build out a visual that we want to have, maybe put that sketch theme so it looks like you did it on a whiteboard, but you really didn't. But then also make it so we can visualize and use animation to show information flow. Remember, arrows talk a lot about a system. And last, Draw.io. This is a classical diagramming tool that you can use locally. So you can use Draw.io desktop and run some of these diagrams yourself. The beauty about this is that it understands some of this language as well. So if you haven't seen this before, Draw.io can do an advanced import. I can import in actual Mermaid type syntax. So that big graph I had earlier from what ChatGPT gave me about a big graph, I can pull it in and put that nice finesse I want on top of my diagrams. So as a final recap, there's a lot of sweet tools you can use that are GraphViz, Mermaid, Diagrams, D2, and Draw.io. the key thing to take away is you can manage diagrams and describe systems with your code base, and you can keep it up to date better if you keep it close to code. Proximity is key. So thank you, and hopefully you can diagram more and describe your systems visually, because remember, we're all visual creatures. Thank you.